Thank you so much, Hubert. Three fascinating presentations. I'm sure there are a lot of questions. So what I'd like to do is invite our speakers to the podium so that we can all see them. And we'll be asking questions and continuing the conversation. Feel free, particularly students, ask about anything. Now's the moment to do so. And I have plenty of questions of my own too, if we have time. So.
Thanks. I'll just use this one. So my question has to do with not knowing history and being in charge of marketing in something like this. I don't know if y'all are aware of this. In 2018, Nike launched a campaign in which they entitled it The Lost Cause. And it was about, the effort to try, it was something about some kind of long-range biking. I think it was a biking product. To all of us in American history, the Lost Cause is associated clearly with white supremacy and the effort to try to look past the Civil War, its cause in slavery, and instead, put it in a valiant effort to hold on to states' rights. For me, that's an example of how every company ought to have a historian on staff because it was such a disastrous misstep. Do you have moments where people come, Tracey or Hubert is also talking about this too, where people launch things and you have to try to teach them history? Like, why couldn't they stop this at Nike? What was the problem there? I don't know, do I need to turn this on? Here.
This one's on.
While they're fixing it?
Sorry, I seem to be the one stuck with the tech problems. Yeah, that happens. That certainly is a great example of what should have been just such an obvious, a catch. But I will tell you more. For me, what happens more often than not is that we get our own company history wrong, and I have to go and set the record straight. And maybe an example of that would be that when California celebrated its centennial in 1850, the company decided that was a nice round number, and they wanted to piggyback on that, and they celebrated the centennial in 1850. And up until they hired my predecessor, most of Levi's products would say since 1850. Well, Levi didn't arrive in San Francisco till 1853. So that was something we had to change up. It's actually a way that I can tell, was this before 1996 when Lynn was hired? But for me, a lot of the experience that I have had is to be able to correct our own history and also to put into context difficult moments in history. And an example I will share is, in San Francisco in the late 1800s, and anti-Chinese sentiment was a reality, and San Francisco was threatened with people not purchasing their products if they hired Chinese laborers. And for a time, they buckled to the pressure. But I also like to put it in context because this was happening all over the nation, and it was a federal law, the Chinese Immigration Act, and to be able to have that larger context so that when we respond to that, we understand that's really important.
Yes. Do we have other questions?
For Tracey, who won the bid for the Einstein jacket and how much did it go for?
That was me. That was me. It was in the afternoon in London. It was 2 a.m. in San Francisco, where I had the president on the line with me, talking him through what the bids were at. The hammer price was about, I recall it being about 96,000 British pounds. And so out the door, US dollars would have been about 150K. Now, I'll tell you that because As soon as we had the auction, we made it public, and we got a lot of press out of it. We don't always share what we buy things for, and in recent times, there have been a lot of stories about auctions for crazy prices for Levi's. Sometimes we don't get involved in that because they overbid, and I get outbid all the time. But yeah, I was lucky enough to be there for that one, and we earned back that amount that we spent and lots more because of the press we got from that. Thanks.
I just want to say thank you so much for all three of you. Your talks were fantastic, very inspiring. It also struck me as I was listening how relevant geography is to all of these discussions, and the idea of understanding spatial patterns, spatial processes, world regions, global change. Geographers would argue the world is not flat, it's quite rugged. And so we argue, I'm a geographer, by the way. But I'm wondering, there seems to be such a great connection between these two disciplines of history and geography, and I'm wondering if you could comment a bit on how really skills in both of those fields support the kind of work that you're doing. So thank you.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question and great observation. I have long, even though I've come of age in my career, kind of in a sort of globalizing world, and we can have conversations about which way the wind is blowing, most of my work has been sort of place-based, place as a unit of analysis. And I think one additional superpower of the future in a world that feels abstract, feels work from homey, feels so virtual, is folks that can dig into place. And by place we mean community, by place we mean markets, and that's a superpower that is interdisciplinary, and it's worth lifting up. I'm thinking out loud, but it's 100% worth lifting up in the way you did just now, and it's been a through line of my career, is feeling attached to place, and giving people new ways to see and engage with places. And so I'd absolutely encourage historians and others to, no matter what their field is, find ways to layer that in.
I've been involved with academic advising for a long time here. And one of the problems that liberal arts majors and history majors, maybe in particular, have is that they don't know what to apply for when they're looking at corporations. I mean, how do they go about finding the niche positions that are actively looking for historians or English majors or political science majors? I mean, I know they're there, but I don't know how to tell students what to look for.
Thanks, Eric. That's a great question.
If I can start, and please. One of the things, one of the challenges that I also see with my students, and you're going to see this in your field of advising, is you look at Indeed, for example, or any other job search platform. You take any position from the business field or any other, 70 to 75% of the description of that position is transferable skills that we've outlined on the slide today. Okay? Another 25 to 20%, 20 to 25% are going to be those specific things, specific skills and competencies that the companies require. So it's a matter of, again, changing that mindset within your student body to say the skills and competencies need to relate to what the employers are looking for. And then you need to focus on the things that you need to, micro-credentials and all the others that Patryk mentioned, that will make you different, make you distinct, make you competitive in that field, okay? So don't look at the prism of the major again, look at the prism of the skills and competencies that we've talked about and apply those to the job description. And that has to be a one-on-one match, one-to-one match if you can. So it takes a lot of work and effort. It takes a lot of advising on my part as well when I work with students. But when they come out at the end, they said, I see clearly that the activities, events, conferences, the capstone projects, the projects that I've been involved in, volunteering, all these cool trips that we took it's not going to Rome and going to a museum. It's researching, learning, and providing some kind of summarizing and providing research and report based on that experience. And those are really direct skills and competencies that they can actually add on their resume.
Part of the challenge, which I hope I understood well, Eric's question, was I think that these ads can be phrased in a language that is completely particular to a given industry. And it has nothing to do with liberal arts. Yes, what you meant, I think, is that it's incumbent on liberal arts majors and their mentors, whoever they be, to sort of cut through the noise of the jargon sometimes and try to understand the skills and use that as a bridge towards that big unknown or whatever. But maybe Tracey also has.
Yeah, I'll maybe bring a different point of view. And that is that there are professional organizations out there for business historians and business archivists. And that's, for me, that's the place to start. And there are, a lot of businesses can't afford to have permanent staff as historians, and they will often outsource it to companies that do work. And there are a number of companies, Heritage Works, History Factory, they all belong to the same organizations I do. So I would encourage you, if you're interested in this kind of work, to join the Society of American Archivists. If you want to go that route, they have a business archivists group, and we meet and have meetings. And we have also in California, there's probably something comparable in Texas, California, where we do that. And there is an international organization as well, because we hosted the last conference in 2019 in San Francisco, Levi, Strauss and Company, of business historians and archivists. I'm happy to answer questions. You feel free, students, if you want to email me, but the professional organizations are a great way to start, specifically that actually call out. I mean, I appreciate what you're saying, but if you're looking for specific and related to your field, there are professional organizations that you can join that'll help.
It's very helpful. What you mentioned is professional organizations, but also history consultancies, right?
Yeah.
Which are a sort of a slightly a different deal, but also interesting. I think it sort of goes together with what you said, that firms cannot hire, a battalion of professional historians, yes, but they can outsource it to those companies that.
And it's a great way to get a start, because they've got projects going on and they want to hire. They don't want to hire necessarily someone permanent, but they have a project and maybe you can get on and get some experience, and that's the way to get in the door.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would just add sort of, the cut to the chase version of the answer is that your first jobs in these fields out of college or whatever, you might feel like you're settling a little bit. So I would, marketing departments, policy departments, policy analysts, marketing. My first job out of college, I was an executive assistant. I was an admin for someone who ran a nonprofit no one's ever heard of, booking flights, managing a schedule. The data tells us that once you're in a job, as long as you've got some macro conviction about the higher cause you're a part of, that liberal arts and history majors tend to, in the long term, we as historians are taught to think with context, begin to outpace and shine once they're in. So I would encourage young people who are studying these things to aim for, be mindful of the fact that your first and second twists and turns in the workplace. You may be doing things you feel above. Sometimes I did. But very quickly in rooms, you'll start to come across as someone who's got vision way ahead of some of your peers who may be specialists.
Thank you.
It sounds like what you're saying is get a job, something you like, and then do well.
I mean, to find work where at a high altitude level you're trusting and feel conviction about mission with people you like. Even if you're booking flights and sending Outlook calendar invites, as I was for the first year of my career, that's a win. Because you very quickly, in rooms and in a variety of contexts, people start taking note that this person's a higher order storyteller and can go above and beyond and perspire and inspire. You have to trust that process and that motor in you will get you past and quickly ahead and passing people in the left lane. And it takes some steel because your peers who've studied other things have got the shiny thing on day zero.
Thank you.
How important would you say networking and experience are, both together and separate?
They're super critical. Yeah. It's such a small, for those of us who do the kind of work that I do, it's such a small group of people, and we support each other. And this is probably true for any profession, we will reach out to each other, so it's really important to network, to know who they are. I learned about this opening at Levi Strauss from the woman who was in it and was retiring, and because we had worked together as business historians for a long time. So that would be my yes.
I would just say, I often try to tell people, someone that's interviewed hundreds of people in lots of countries is sort of try to present yourself with, one way to break through is to present yourself as having a cause or a passion that exists above career or the job you're applying for. When I've interviewed a dozen people for a job, everybody's smart, everyone's got the right buzzwords, congratulations, everyone's got these credentials. But the people that stand out are people that have a light around a particular crusade or a passion that exists sort of above whether or not they get this job. And you get the feeling that they're going to move the ball forward on that passion independent of the yes, no here. And I think that's also what comes from the liberal arts, is that it lives in us in a deeper way than just a skill. It's a sensibility, it's a temperament, it's an attitude towards life that I just encourage. I think that's also a way to build relationship and break through.
Wonderful, thank you. Hubert, you want to weigh in?
One of the competencies that you actually see in that circle is relationship building. Okay, and you're going to be building relationships at various levels. You're going to be building relationships or networking at the entry-level position, as Rishi mentioned. But then as you grow, mid-level and senior level and executive level, you're going to also continue to build those relationships in different areas. And I want you to actually explore that and see what kind of, again, skills and competencies you need to have to build meaningful relationships, not just to get this entry-level job, which is also important, but also to continue and have that long-term trusting relationship with your business partner and client and so on and so forth.
Thank you. I have one quick question as a follow-up to some of the things we just talked about. It's clear that liberal arts graduates need to do some legwork in order to meet the companies halfway. I was curious, what is your experience in companies over the course of the years that you've been working in the private sector? In companies, actually maybe implementing some mentorship programs and also making steps towards telling liberal arts graduates, so people they need, essentially, we all agree, to come to them. Are there such initiatives in-house? We know they cannot afford a lot of historians there, but what about those who graduated in history or other liberal arts, who want to just get the feel of things? What's the status of internships, for instance, in the companies that you work for?
Because our head count has to be kept really tight, we usually have internships available. Not a whole lot of them, but they come up every year. And you gave some great advice about how to stand out when you're interviewing. I would say that the other thing that stands out for me as someone who's hiring is someone who you could tell really wants the job, so they'll reach out, they'll follow up. They keep in touch, so they're persistent, I guess would be they're not annoying, so they're not, but they're persistent, and then you know that they're serious about it. And those are the ones that I end up often hiring for internships.
Thank you.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think I've come across, at least in my career, too much sort of explicit liberal arts targeted mentoring or programs, et cetera, at companies. And I think that's part of this movement we're now trying to build. You're a part of it now, is sort of mainstreaming this identity of being able to say out loud, not just underground, above ground, that I'm a humanist in tech, I'm a humanist in business, and there ought to be awards for that too. And I think we're at the ground floor, hopefully, of mainstreaming that in our culture. And on that level, I'm actually grateful for all the improvements in artificial intelligence, because it's created this sort of unbelievable ability to make the argument in a way I couldn't a year ago.
Thanks. Hubert?
Hi, I currently work for a municipality, and I am on the position that you guys are in where I'm hiring liberal arts majors. I'm trying to work on improving that and in creating initiatives within my own municipality to do that. You all mentioned initiatives that you have worked towards. How are you encouraging your peers, your business partners in your own companies to hire liberal arts majors and make that a part of the hiring initiative?
That sort of goes together, I think, with the question. Hubert, do you want to go for it?
How did you implement that is my main question, because I'm looking to do the same thing.
Can you repeat the question, please?
How do you implement hiring processes that prefer liberal arts majors or lead towards those goals, rather than asking the students to continually meet us? How do we meet them more?
Right. So the question is, it's very similar to sort of what I had before. So I think you want to
Correct.
answer.
And
How did you implement them is my main question.
well, one of the, again, I think goes well with advising that you put in place to understand what the industry is looking for. What we've done within the undergraduate program at UT Dallas is the three, we call it the three-legged approach to advising. You have the mentoring from your program director, you have the mentoring from the advising from the university, and then you have the mentoring or advising from somebody from industry. And then you are able to receive three different feedbacks, levels of advice that you can then shape in a way that will guide where you're heading. I'll give you, there is a number of students who actually, and I have a bit of data on this, because we looked at the number of students graduating with just one degree, global business. Again, I mentioned how kind of ambiguous that is in terms of both skills and competencies. And we realized that the students who were actually double majoring with international political economy did a lot better than students actually who were just doing one single major.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'm not sure I've delivered an initiative quite like what you have in mind, but my overall mantra of sort of how do I be the change is to show, not tell. Right. One of the tough parts about the case we're making here is we got long list of fuzzy sounding adjectives that really embody what a history major, blah blah blah, can be. The best way to sell is just a list of people, in my mind, right? A list of people who are in the business world or in the technology world who are being declaratory about identifying as folks in the liberal arts. And to me, that's been really important, both the initiatives I've launched, the people I've hired, my own story, and coming out about my own story, so to speak. I think showing, not telling, sometimes is a great way to move this product forward.
Thank you. A question on this side. Rabia, go ahead.
So I apologize in advance if my question doesn't make much sense. I do have autism, and sometimes it's difficult for me to describe what I want to ask sometimes. But I am an anthropology major myself, and I was wondering if there's any advice you probably have on applying anthropology as well as history to a business degree of some sorts. If that
Great
makes
question.
sense.
Great question. Anyone wants to speak to this?
I will tell you that my degree was in public history, and we had folks that came in that were experienced in anthropology, an undergraduate. A lot of the work that they were doing related to cultural resources management, being able to apply his history skills and anthropology skills that were married. A lot of them were being hired by either private agencies or by government positions. Yeah, but they're very allied careers, as you probably figured out.
And also the example that you saw based on my trip to Rome explains why cities like Rome or other cities that are so rich in history need historians and anthropologists basically to work side by side in business activities to make those cities sustainable. So
I don't know, but there's one thing I want to answer also. Most consulting firms that are cropping up right now, they hire anthropologists because culture is so important, and anthropologists are so preoccupied with human experience, with the different dimensions of human experience, with the empirical research on human experience, as well as theory of human experience. They also dabble in history. But experience is such a big and important issue for companies because, of course, customers have experience, and every company wants to deliver the best experience to their customers because then that translates into revenue, right? So, anthropology, huge.
I feel like we should call on this person here who's been.
Oh yes, Rabia, please.
Oh, right.
To work now. Okay, hi. I wanted to ask you guys, you've all had experiences being in other countries, working in, different parts of different industries. What was it like kind of going over there and talking about things that maybe were more sort of, like you said, bringing Twitter over to South Asia? What was that experience like, and how was it trying to connect with a completely different demographic to something that seemed a little bit more centralized and rooted in American culture?
It's a great question. I guess my first reaction, two quick reactions. One is it was exhilarating and felt like it was a part of my liberal arts education, actually. I mean, being an expat abroad, particularly early in your career, it feels like it was an extension of my degree. In some ways, I would credit my being an expat abroad as just as a co-equal part of my humanities awakening as my undergraduate coursework. So the second answer is that it didn't actually feel that different from taking wild new ideas I had in Detroit to the institutions of that place. Or, one thing you realize is once you build a muscle, once you cultivate the muscle and superpower of walking into conversations where you're trying to pitch something essentially, but coming in with a sense of deeply felt respect, curiosity, and that template is as valuable in New Delhi as it is in Detroit. Both contexts in which I built new and created new endeavors that last to this day. And so often people look at my career and they're like, dude, you've been zigzag. What does this all have in common? The through line is just that, is sort of, there's been a through line of experience where it just all feels like a singular muscle. And I think one of the things that I'd encourage all people to do is to stay wide and deep. In your career, you do want to declare a major at some point because it helps you grow your reputation and produces interesting inbound, but you do want to make sure to stay wide as well because it keeps you intellectually refreshed, and that's what living abroad twice now did for me.
Yes, I guess for me is, so kind of as an undergrad student, what I see through all of this is just kind of an effort to link business and like history and liberal arts as like a whole. But like everyone's been saying, this is kind of like a huge shift in like, what you're traditionally taught as like what your opportunities are as like a history major. And I guess for you guys, and also maybe for some of the other alumni and the other business people in general, like it kind of seems, I guess, almost, I don't want to say normal, but it seems doable and like plausible just because like this is kind of like the course that your life has led and this is the course that your careers have gone. But as like a history, as a history student who's kind of like grown up in, in like kind of like the traditional field, like, oh, you're either going to go into teaching or you're going to go into academia or you're going to go into archival work or things like that. It is like this huge, kind of perspective shift. And I guess my question for you guys is what like specific tips and things that you do have to like help you shift that perspective, and like what specific things that you guys can offer that can say like, hey, this is how I use my thing in this completely new and radically different way.
Thank you for this. Advice, question for about advice.
One element I wanted to add was explore the trends. And Rishi mentioned a number of elements, including curiosity and so on and so forth. Explore the trends. What are the trends telling you around the world? And then look at how can you apply the skills and competencies that you have to those trends, right? It's not about looking at the degree itself. It's about the path to success through the different ways of achieving the different stages in your life. And as Rishi mentioned, and all of us have shifted throughout our career, right? So our major was the element of curiosity that got us to stage one, and then based on the broader and deeper understanding where things were going, whether it was Detroit, whether it's India or China or other places, then you start kind of figuring out where you want to be 3 to 5 years from now, right? So I tell my students to look at the kind of the career roadmap too. Life is going to take you into different directions, but start with the roadmap, what that entry point is going to be, what that 5-year checkpoint is going to be, and what possibly, I don't think any of us kind of thought about what we would be doing in 20 years from graduation, but at least have a sense of what your ideal position may look like, right? Nonprofit, executive, so on and so forth, historian, or so on and so forth. Again, life is going to take you in different directions, but have a start.
It's good to have a direction, basically, and then and being able to change it rather than having no direction, right?
Yeah, I would just add, in addition to some of that, one thing that a very small but big tip that has helped me is just the importance of being the best writer and communicator you can. It sounds very kind of trivial, but I think, one thing that I have been astonished by in my career is how far great communicators can go in any field. As part of this new program I've launched at Virginia Tech, I've interviewed hundreds and hundreds of alums who are in their 40s, 50s, and I ask all of them, if you could go back to college, what courses would you take? All of them say history or English, because they realize no matter their career, all they're doing is email writing, all they're doing is storytelling, all they're doing is communicating all day, and that can't be an Achilles heel. That's got to be an asset. And so try to take as I try to do, every email I write, everything I put together, I ensure it meets a standard of excellence that makes me proud. The small things, the little things, I get made fun of for it by colleagues, but it has absolutely catapulted me in my career, and also happens to be an embodiment of what the history degree is all about.
Thank you. Tracey.
And I would also say, presenting yourself in writing, but also in person. When I applied to this job as the historian, one of the things that I had to do in the application, in the interview procedure, was they asked me to tell a story. I had to come prepared to tell a story because that was such an important part of the role. Being able to communicate in that way is really important as well.
Thank you. Actually, it's a good time, I think, to take the question from the English department colleague who is right there. Did you have a question?
Hi, yeah, I just wanted to find out a little bit more. Rishi, you mentioned that it was at a certain point in your career where you really actively started talking more about the fact that you were a history major. And I'm very interested in collecting who is an English major. That's just a side project of mine. And there's some surprising people that have degrees in English and that you find, but they really never mention it. And I've never met one of them to say, why do you never mention that you have an English major? But I would really like to know more about how come we have
encourage more people to talk about the degree they have and the influence it's had on what they have achieved in their life. And how does that relate to our interactions with our alumni, whether those come centrally from the universities where we received our degrees, or whether they come straight from the department where you received your degrees? Did that influence it, or for you, what made that change happen?
I mean, I think you're first of all 100% right. I think we need to create a wider culture in which it's cool to be expressive about one's liberal arts and humanities identity, and that is that's a project with 1,000 points of light. This is just one. Part of what I'm trying to do at Virginia Tech is create a stage on which I'll be able to tell you, hey, look at the class of 2030, which includes dozens of tech people from 10 countries and 15 companies, all of whom are studying together British literature. Why? Because they know that it can be a driver of their organizational leadership, of a more empathetic approach to product management, and a clarity of communication and precision, et cetera, et cetera. So one big picture, I have a deeply felt sense of urgency around ushering in a new climate for these kinds of people. In terms of what allowed me to feel that comfort, it was honestly that book that my buddy from Google wrote, and his courage to write a book 6 years before artificial intelligence, where he chronicles over 300 pages. There's a number of English majors in that book. You know, he talks often about startup founders having a kind of charisma that reminds him of, and he chronicles the theater background of many startup founders. So much of fundraising and being a founder and being an entrepreneur is about charisma. And charisma is about having a light and a passion and things like that. So that book, for me, was a watershed moment of feeling comfortable saying, I want to be in rooms where the humanities are trying to figure out new and novel ways to go to market. And now what I'm doing in Virginia is building a new kind of go-to-market for our field, but I hope it's copied and catalyzes more points of light in the movement as well. And I'd be happy to talk afterwards and give you some of the English major names I have from Silicon Valley.
Thank you. It strikes me that what we're also talking about is the importance of imagination, right? Which I think connects all of the stories that you guys have been telling, yes, and which ties, I think, our disciplines together in the liberal arts. So thanks for asking that question. I've been meaning to ask that question. There's Imre, I see.
Also, understanding his own mind. So I seem to get the point that it's only about 25% about content, and it's more 75% how to deliver whatever you're. I would say it's not so much different in academia than in the business world. I tell my students, be curious, stay curious, be passionate about what you do, and whatever the goal is, be persistent. I guess you can apply this in academia, and I think it's not so different in the corporate world. And I would encourage students to hone their interpersonal skills. So if you can organize a birthday party for 5-year-olds, then you can solve a lot of problems in the classroom if you become a teacher as an historian, and I'm pretty sure it also works well in the boardroom, finally. So, just to be serious, go out and on and try and try and try again your interpersonal skill. Become active in associations, in fraternities, organize something. You need to have interpersonal skill designed as a historian. If we go back to Greek antiquity, to Roman antiquity, the gateway to all the great jobs was a rhetoric education. So you became then Julius Caesar, great statesman, great military leader. So with talking to people, convincing people, you can achieve almost everything.
It's a great point. Thank you very much. Go ahead. Kyle.
Hello. I am a history major, and I was wondering, I'm introverted. How is being introverted going to affect my possible career choices as a archival historian?
It's a fantastic question. Thank you.
Thanks for asking that. And I will tell you that the person that is my right hand is an introvert. So we balance each other out. I like to do the out front public stuff. She's the behind the scenes, and she's also got the same background as I do, but she doesn't want to be the public face of it. So I think there's room there to be able to work side by side. I think it's going to be, I would say that it's going to be a little harder sell getting in because, you know, people have to know you. So I would say that probably what's important is to understand what you can do really well and to be able to know that whoever's hiring you knows that you're going to be able to do that really well. And that was the case of the person that I hired. I went after her, not because she was the public spokesperson, but because she did what she did really, really well, and I knew what it was. Yeah, I hope that makes sense.
It does, thank you.
Hubert, Rishi, do you want to speak to the question about introversion at all?
Yeah, one of the trends that you've seen, for example, in learning and development and HR over the last 10 years or so. When I joined the field, it was a lot of business majors joining L&D and HR and so on and so forth. And then they realized that we need to bring actually more English, history, psychology, and so on and so forth. We want to get closer to our audience. We want to make sure that you have again, going back to the English writing skills and being able to research, being able to really deliver quality content. So going back to your question about being introvert, some of the students that I've interviewed as well were actually going back and delivering quality content without being the front face people with the client, for example, right? So you do all that, you get credit for it, obviously, but then you partner with someone who's more comfortable being in front of the client.
I would just say, in addition to playing to your strengths as a history major and an introvert, which may be in the orbit of writing in that regard, I think reimagining what it means to be an extrovert, sort of, I think with your writing you can find new, novel ways to be an extrovert in our culture, so to speak, without necessarily having to be an extrovert in your person. And I think that if I look back on a lot of my career, so many of those serendipitous moments, because there is serendipity involved here, occurred because I've picked my extroverty spots. Don't be fooled by my speeches and things like that I'm, always enjoy being out there necessarily, but being surgical about when I put myself out there and what I wear, what kind of passion I wear on my sleeves, has made all the difference in a few plot twist moments.
A lot of people see introversion and extroversion as a question not of shyness, but of energy, right? So you're talking about basically saving your energies for those crucial moments where you can intervene in the public-facing situations, right? And being an introvert otherwise, right? Actually, a lot of people say that introverts are great bosses because they can listen, which, not everybody can. And listening is one of those great skills that is highly valued right now in the business.
There's a great book titled Quiet. I don't know if you've read
Susan
about
Cain.
introverts. Yeah.
Yes.
So.
Yes.
Hello. So I have a question that maybe it's going to be a little more personal. I have a question since, we're sort of looking at you all as mentors for what we can look forward to in the future. Maybe if y'all wouldn't mind sharing something about some adversities you faced, as you were trying to get jobs as you were, trying to get involved and get your career going? Because I know there's probably a lot of us in here who we haven't even started our careers yet. This is just the beginning, but we know we're going to face some adversities. But I would love to hear y'all's stories, if you have any, about adversities that you faced and overcame and that you can look back at now and be like, wow, I made it. I got through it. Is there anything y'all want to share about that?
Thank you.
I'll talk about my perspective as a woman and a mother. I started my graduate degree, and my oldest was 5, and my baby was 1, and I was scared about going back as a mother, trying to figure that out. It's one of the reasons that going to business drew me. I found that the business world was much more flexible in my work schedule. Now this might, this is a while ago, so it may have changed, but I think that knowing that there were others and getting good child care, I would just say whatever it is your personal struggle, that we've all been there. I took whatever job I could get. It didn't matter because it was going to give me some experience. A lot of the work that I did was volunteer. When I had my young kids and all I could do was like a weekend something, I volunteered as a tour guide at our local national monument and I think, looking back on it, I didn't intend it that way, but I think it's helped me with a lot of the work that I do. So yeah, you just, those little building blocks, actually all that experience pays off in the end with you being so flexible and having lots of different skills.
I'd say for me, the kind of adversity I've faced has been more in the area of the tension between living my playbook and not living the playbook our culture wants me to live. And that's been hard, right? I mean, to go from the Googleplex to Asia, to leave Google and drop out of business school, to start a nonprofit, to start a weird venture firm, to quit technology and go to higher ed, to be an academic entrepreneur. It's occasionally you have to steel yourself because you're not going to get all the stickers that your buddies from college might be getting, so to speak. And all people want to feel seen. I want to feel seen, right? Even me. And when Patryk reached out on LinkedIn, right, a few months ago, it was awesome, right, to have an academic out here taking note of something I was building. And that was a way to feel nourished. And so I think I would encourage all of you to be mindful that there is steel you're going to build ahead, but making sure you have communities of nourishers around you as you stay true to your authentic path is really important. And I, again, thank Patryk for being, I think, an entrepreneur in this field and a partner in crime, I think.
Thank you, Rishi.
I have a couple of examples. One is you look at all of you are going to be looking for a purpose in life, and I think Rishi and Tracey kind of found that purpose already. And when you are searching for that purpose, life is not going to be all roses. But you're going to be persistent. You're going to continue. You're going to overcome these challenges, and you're going to move forward. In 2005, I moved to India for about 6 months, came back to the US. But there was a drive in me that I wanted to actually move and live in China. At that time, I had a 6-month-old daughter and a family. I said, how do we do this? This was a challenge. And we all committed to this. We knew that this is going to bring us, the entire family, a valuable experience and purpose. We decided to actually move to China for a year and a half. It was a great experience. Again, it was not roses. You adapt to a different culture. You adapt to a different way of life. You have to give up some of these comforts that you have in your own place, which we do not sometimes want to give up, right? But it makes you a stronger person, a stronger human being, and a stronger global citizen.
It's fascinating. What I hear from all of you guys is the kind of a celebration of non-linearity that comes through, right? I think we're so accustomed to think in terms of staircases, but it's kind of, all a little fragmented right now. I think the same ways that our modern experience is fragmented and art is becoming fragmented, I think careers are also much more fragmented, right? And I think it's time, just like it's time to start celebrating the humanities because, they pay attention to these things, it's also time to start celebrating non-linearity and actually embracing the serendipity and discovery that comes from it. Because from what I hear is there was always a moment of growth that comes with it. Crisis often comes with growth. That's a cliche, I know, but there's some truth to this, right? And I think that's also what you said. Well, it actually happens, yes, that it is the time that we are scheduled to wrap up the conversation. Yes. So before we invite everyone to the reception, I just wanted to say literally a couple of words that I think maybe will sum things up a little bit. And it all ends with C's, and I have 4 words that start with a C. I came up with context, I came up with creativity, curiosity, but also courage. Yes, I think if there's one thing that maybe that you leave with as majors in history and liberal arts majors, that I think is going to impact the way you approach your career search, is have the courage, because you have everything it takes. You just need to make a couple extra steps, learn things, figure a couple of things out, but you have so much value. And so I hope that you act on it. We all hope that you act on it. So I wanted to really thank everyone for coming here, for engaging in this super lively conversation. I want to thank our guests for amazing, inspiring presentations and comments and responses to your questions. I want to thank all of you for taking the time from your really busy schedules to come and engage with us, and I wholeheartedly invite you to continue to talk to our guests, to us, over coffee and cookies and some hors d'oeuvres. So thank you very much.